Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Plug in Play podcast. I'm your host, Henry, your guide and guru to all things gaming. And this episode, we have a very news-heavy episode for you. We have the big Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer. Everybody's seen it, everybody's talking about it, and we're gonna go through it. We got the death of video games journalism. Yes, that's right. Polygon, Giant Bomb, both dead in a fatal swoop in the same week, and we're going to be talking about that. And then, of course, the Xbox price increases across the board. Their consoles, their games, they're going to cost more. Come on, I don't got no more money, Xbox. Don't do this to me. But we're going to talk about it here on the podcast. But before we do that, why don't you give us a rating? You know, just a thought. You can give us a 5-star, preferably. I mean, that's what I hope for. I mean, but, you can do it on any of your favorite podcast services. We're on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Podcast Addict. I mean, you name it, we're there. Anything that Anchor puts us on automatically, we're there for you. Why not leave a comment, a review? Maybe you can even send an email into the podcast, at pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. It's an email address. You can send a question in and be a part of the show. If it's too much to remember, it's in the description, along with timestamps. It's a labor of love. I do it for you. If you don't like what I'm talking about, you want to skip it, you want to go to something you want to hear about more, you can just do that. It's because I care. But before we get into that, it's been a long couple of weeks here. The impression segment will be on Clair Obscure. I should have mentioned that, but I haven't finished it. I haven't actually been putting too much time into it at all because I've been out of town. I went to Chicago recently, and then came back and I was sick as a dog. So I didn't feel like playing anything at all, and then really didn't have the energy to play anything at all. So I don't have as much to talk about in terms of impressions, but I have been playing that, and I have been watching The Last of Us Season 2 on HBO, continuing to be a solid show. I got into a lot more of it in the last episode on my impressions so far. They really haven't changed that much. I still think it's a solid show. I still think, it's doing a very good job adapting it, making slight changes in ways that I think are pretty good. If you want to hear more of my full impression on that, go back to the last episode. Happy for you to listen to it there. But I think the big question now is, where is this season going to end? I think we have 2 more episodes left in the season at the time of this airing, or something along those lines. I think everybody's kind of trying to debate whether we're getting to the Rat King section of the game or not. I don't really care. As long as we get to all of it, as long as we hit the highlights at some point, like I stated in the last episode, this show is going to be going on for a really long time. Or not a really, really long time, but we're going to have a few more seasons of this show, definitively. HBO wants to milk this cow for all it's worth, so I think we're good. I think we're gonna get all of it at some point or another. But yeah, I still think it's good. I'm looking forward to seeing how they continue to tackle this moving forward. Speaking of my trip to Chicago, while I was there, I had the opportunity, I had some downtime, and I went to the Galloping Ghost Arcade. You may not know of it, but I definitely wanted to give it a shout out on the podcast while I'm going through the motions here. Is the Galloping Ghost Arcade, for those that don't know, is the largest arcade, I believe, in the world, if not certainly in the United States of America, and it is a sight to behold. I went up there a couple of years ago on my bachelor party. I went to my bachelor party was in Chicago. Went there, and I was like a kid in a candy store. I mean, it's almost crazy. It's old school arcade machines, so it's not like the newfangled, what you would kind of think of as modern. It's like, you go there, it's like Q*bert and Donkey Kong or Super Mario or Mario. what the frick did they call the arcade machine? I'm pretty sure it's just Donkey Kong, right? Oh man, I feel like it's my lack of gamer knowledge showing. Dang, I feel embarrassed. But King of Kong, the documentary. But anyway, old school stuff. Space Invaders. They have some more modern-esque stuff. Like they have like a Resident Evil machine it's again somewhat old, but like stuff. Basically, most of the stuff there is stuff that I would have grown up and seen in like a pizza parlor. Like if I ever went to like a local pizza establishment around town or something, they would have these games, but I didn't even realize that most of these games like existed. It's genuinely a historical time capsule, and they almost treat it like that. Like this is not only an arcade, it's a museum, and I really respect that and appreciate it greatly. And so, if you walk into Galloping Ghost Arcade, you go in and it's like crammed. Like there's hardly even room for you to move in between the machines. It's so crammed with just game after game after game after game, and it's almost an exploratory adventure just going through the place, because you go into the first room, you're like, holy frick, this is a lot of games. You go into the second area and you're like, okay, this is definitely a lot of video games. You keep going into a third area and you're like, oh my gosh, like there's no way this can keep going. And then you go into a fourth area and you're like, oh dang, I had no idea this kept going. Like this is insane. And then you can go to the left as well when you enter, which you don't normally do. You normally go to the right, and you're like, oh frick, there's 2 more sections of this freaking place with even more games. Some of the games are really cool, clearly experimental things that were put into arcades or just classics. Like I was saying, like Space Invaders or something like that, or like games that like I remember as a kid. Like there's some Star Wars pod racing games there that I remember wanting to play as a kid, but it was like freaking 50 cents or something a pop, and it's like I don't got that kind of scratch, like I'm freaking 4, like I don't have that kind of money. But like you pay $25 and you get in all day, and it's an experience. It's so much fun. You just basically you just hop. Because, there's so many games, hundreds of games. There's no way you can play all of them, even if you wanted to. So, like, you have to just kind of get in a rhythm of just, like, trying out each game, like, kind of giving it 1 or 2 tries, and then just, like, moving on to the next one. And I think it's, like, it's just such a fun experience. I love going to that place. Ended up getting a t-shirt because I just really, really enjoy it and appreciate what it's doing. I even found a machine that they had co-developed. They had the developer of Rampage. If you remember Rampage, the Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie, of course, he made like a game, but then like never published it, and it was like a FMV game, like choose your own adventure game. And they went back and they found all the footage and they put it together and made it an actual game and then turned it into an arcade cabinet. You can go buy it on Steam, or you can play the arcade cabinet version in Galloping Ghost Arcade in Chicago. So it's clearly they really do put a lot of emphasis on like this is almost like kind of a museum. And it's always cool. It's always like got a lot of people in there. It's a really cool spot. And so I really just wanted to give it a shout out, give it some love on the podcast. But now that we've gotten into that, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the show, shall we? This is the first topic, and I think the biggest one, right? Grand Theft Auto 6. So there's 2 things to talk about here. First off, delayed. That was the first announcement that Rockstar had to talk about. May 26, 2026. Wow. Okay. That was kind of a surprise to even me. I think everybody has been watching this game and being like, it's going to get pushed. There's no way this is coming out 2025. They keep saying 2025. It's not coming out 2025. And I was thinking like, oh yeah, okay, I can see it hitting like a February or March. May 26 was much later than I expected. I mean, we got over a year before this game comes out. I don't think it matters. I mean, this game is going to be a massive success no matter what. It is going to be probably the biggest game of all time, easily the highest grossing game of all time. I mean, I think we already know this game is going to cost $80 to $100, and we're going to get into that even further as we go into the episode, thanks to Microsoft. But like, this is a confirmed like going to be a massive deal. I think everybody was a little disappointed with the delay, but like, I genuinely don't care. Like, I think I have way more than enough games to play right now. The only people who could possibly be disappointed with that are people who only play GTA 5 and are like, I really only want to play GTA 6 now. Otherwise, there are so many other things for you to play, so many other things in life for you to do, that you do not need to be upset that Grand Theft Auto 6 is delayed. You got plenty of things, plenty of games to get to in the meantime. Later that week, they dropped the second trailer for GTA 6. So they've been kind of radio silent with this game for a really long time. And they don't have to be. I mean, like, I feel like it's genuinely part of their marketing strategy that they've been pretty silent. It just keeps people wanting, keeps people talking. And, you know, like, I think it really does stir up a lot more conversation that they're being silent than if they were actually being active in their marketing materials. And now we know they have such a long period of time to fill between now and release that, of course, they're going to kind of stay a little bit silent here. But this is a very beautiful trailer, incredibly so. I mean, this is a game that we're clearly going to have for like the next several decades. Likely, this may likely be the last Grand Theft Auto game ever. Like, to be fair, like this could genuinely be the last Grand Theft Auto game. They could completely shift this into a live service game that never gets updated into a 7 ever. I mean, it's been like 15 years since Grand Theft Auto 5. So, you know, like, this is likely going to be at least another 15 years, right? So, and I think when we get to that point, I think games are just going to be all Fortnite. You know, I think everybody would have been weeded out by that point, right? But like, this trailer looks amazing. It kind of has to if it's going to last for the next 15 years. There are some shots that I genuinely was like, bro, this almost looks like reality. Like, they eventually came out and stated, okay, this is a gameplay / cutscene trailer. It doesn't matter. It looks the same. I could not distinguish what was an in-game cutscene and what was gameplay. Like, I had no idea. So to me, it doesn't even matter. You know, like, I'd be more interested to know exactly what is considered gameplay in the game, because I couldn't tell, and that's very impressive. We didn't really get much gameplay out of this in terms of like seeing mechanics or shooting or anything. This is your basic Grand Theft Auto trailer. They don't really change too much in how they're really shown off. Basically just a lot of action and characters talking. And, you know, like, that's fine. It's just, I don't really know much about this game other than it is another Grand Theft Auto game, which to a lot of people is literally all that matters. I am admittedly not one of those people. I feel like Grand Theft Auto, I can't even say that I dislike Grand Theft Auto. I think Grand Theft Auto 5 was a good game. I enjoyed my time with Grand Theft Auto 5, at least single player. I didn't really dabble too much in the online, but like, I didn't really enjoy 4. I didn't even beat 4. It bored me. I have never put enough time into San Andreas. I've always wanted to. That was kind of the one I wanted to. And then, like, really the only thing I ever did as a kid in Grand Theft Auto 3, which was really the first mainstream Grand Theft Auto that I was ever really introduced to growing up, was like, I just freaking tried to get 5 stars and just avoid the police. And like, that was the most fun I had playing that game. And I think most people can kind of say the same thing, in all honesty. So like, I'm not particularly interested. I feel like there's 1,000,001 open world games now. I feel like Grand Theft Auto honestly needs to do something to attract me more than it does. Like back when this series was initially taking off in popularity, it was super popular because this was the first big open world game where you had a lot of player agency and player freedom. You could do whatever you wanted. There wasn't a lot of rails that you had to work with, or that were restricting you. And now it's like, well, yeah, every game does that, and every game has kind of learned from Grand Theft Auto in that way. And I feel like I need more. Like, I need more of a hook. I need more of something to differentiate it from you are just walking around a regular place and doing, crime. And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, I've done that in 5,000 other games. I feel like I need more. And you're like, well, Henry, this is going to be one of the most expensive games ever, and it's made by Rockstar, who made all these other great games. And, like, I get that. They're great writers, great characters, great story, the whole nine. And, like, clearly this is going to be one of the most expensive games ever produced. It's going to look and play and feel amazing. I can't argue with any of that. It's just like, if your big claim to being fun is like, I'm very realistic and I'm very, I'm just a very well-polished game, it's like, I just need to see more there to be excited about it. And right now this is like, yeah, there's a game here, it has story and characters, and it's like, and it's very pretty, and it's like, okay, I mean, that's great, but like, I need more. I need more than that to really be excited. That did not stop, like, the world from being excited here. This, on day one, had nearly, what I've read is nearly 500 million views across all platforms. Holy frick. At the time of recording, I'm looking at the YouTube trailer alone, and it has nearly 100 million views. This is insane. To say the least. Like, this blew up immediately. Clearly there's an audience here. If you were ever thinking like that there isn't, clearly, like, just because like this game hasn't really been in the zeitgeist for the past 15 years, that's highly incorrect. Like, Grand Theft Auto clearly still has a lot of cachet as a name, as a brand, and people are frothing at the mouth for it. This is a little bit more for me, but Take-Two stock dropped 10% or 8 to 10% at the announcement of this game, which I just find funny. This is clearly, I am not a financial advisor, okay, but I would, if you got in at the 10% drop, I think that's pretty smart. Because there is no way that this stock does not come smashing back up through the roof when this game comes out in a year. This is Wall Street fat cats looking to optimize their returns. No doubt. Because, like, obviously without Grand Theft Auto coming out this year, it means that Take-Two's next quarter is going to be less than what they anticipate. Obviously, they still have Borderlands 4, which is going to do incredibly well, guaranteed. And then Mafia: The Old Country, which, quick side note, but that's like a linear story-based game now, which is the first Mafia game that's ever been like that, which actually kind of makes me more intrigued and more interested by it. I was like not intrigued or interested by it at all initially. But anyway, their quarter is going to be fine, but it's going to be nowhere near as good as if Grand Theft Auto came out. I mean, that game's, like I said, going to be the highest grossing revenue of any game, of any entertainment ever, of all time, and probably will maintain that for decades. I would think a very long time, that record. So, like, this game is going to do gangbusters, and continue to make them money, because I'm sure the online component of this game is going to be insane and hook people, and they're going to have a lot more emphasis on it now than they did originally with Grand Theft Auto 5. They're building it from the ground up, I'm assuming, to hook people into this online world that they're going to be building and continuing to build for probably decades to come. So, like, this game is going to do amazing and make them a lot of money. And if you want in on the Take-Two thing, it's going to be, this quarter is not going to be as good. So, yeah, get out now. But obviously, this game is going to shoot their stock up through the roof in, a year. So, like, get in at the 10% drop now, and then you'll be freaking making bank in, a year. So, it's, to me, an obvious win. If you can sit on it, if you can manage to sit on it for a year, it's an obvious win. But, Wall Street, it's immediate returns, so I understand. So anyway, that's really most of what I have to say about Grand Theft Auto 6. I'm not as excited as clearly the vast majority of the world is, but I do think that there's definitely some things to get excited about here. I don't think I see any reason to get excited enough to like buy this day one for myself, but like it's not the kind of game that I'm normally going to be gravitating towards anyway. Open world games kind of scare me now because they're too much time. I'd much rather play a short story-focused game instead. So that's where we're at with Grand Theft Auto 6. I hope it was worth your click to hear about it, because that's all anybody really cares about, right? Next up, we got Polygon being sold to Valnet and then basically completely gutted and killed immediately after. And then, of course, Giant Bomb, one of the initial, we're going to say one of the big independent creators of that really started the creator content movement in like 2008. Like they are a real big brand that's been with the hardcore gaming community for a really long time, and they're pretty much dead as well. And we're going to get into that because neither one of them is technically dead. So we're going to get into the specifics here, but here we go. So Valnet is the owner of Screen Rant and Game Rant, two websites you may have heard of, and a variety of other sites, among other porn sites as well. That's how they got started, was off of pornography sites. Basically, they're click farm content. If you go to, I have been to Game Rant. It is a fairly popular video game website, and it is, if you go and you look at the articles they're churning out, I thought I had heard of Game Rant because it had done like video game journalism, and so I like checked it out when I was initially trying to do research for the podcast, and I was like, oh, no, it's just a bunch of click farm stuff. It's like, here are the top 5 things to know when you start playing Final Fantasy VII. Here's all of the superpowers in Indivisible or whatever the frick, or Invincible. Excuse me, I haven't watched that show yet. Need to. Here are all the superpowers that we've seen in Invincible. Here's the top 5 games of March, and it's like it's like click farm stuff. It's stuff that is just going to get you clicks. It's going to attract the lowest common denominator. It's stuff that you see and you're just like, who is really reading this? Like this is like something you should just get with a Google search. You shouldn't really have to make an article on a video game news site in order to get. But anyway, those are the people that bought Polygon, right? So ex-writers for the site started to say that like they essentially all got laid off. Like this is a skeleton crew. From what I've heard, it's like contractors that are essentially just kind of sitting at the helm, waiting to kind of revitalize Polygon in a way. But all the major journalists, all the big names that Polygon, and I guess I should state, Polygon is one of the premier video game journalism websites. Like when you think of video game journalists, one of the first things you're going to think of is Polygon. It's been around for a very long time. It's been known for its gaming journalism. And so a lot of its staff getting laid off is a pretty big hit. It's a pretty big name that's clearly going to die because it's going to be turned into another Game Rant. Like this is clearly Valnet picking up Polygon to turn it into another Game Rant, just utilizing the Polygon brand awareness and name to get people to go to the site and, essentially continue to click on, top 5 things you need to know before you start playing Clair Obscure, like that kind of thing. But like all the journalists essentially started getting laid off, and they came out and a couple of them basically said, look, Valnet has come to talk to me, and like they asked me a few things before they fired me. And I was, I kind of told them like, hey, we're very big on journalism here. Maybe we should continue doing that. And they're like, nah, like that's not something we're particularly interested in. And we'd really rather just pivot to clickbait stuff. And then they fired them. So, we've kind of confirmed through various sources and kind of context clues, that's what's going to be happening here. So this is basically Polygon's death as a video game journalism website. And then we had Giant Bomb. So Giant Bomb is a site that I'm not going to say I've been following for years, but I've certainly been aware of for years. I tried to get into it at one point, and I just could not. I could not care. I didn't really care for the personalities or the opinions on the show. The only thing I really liked about Giant Bomb was Jeff Grubb, and specifically his reporting. And I've referenced him and cited him several times on this podcast because he does do a lot of game-breaking news. He's sometimes the first person to report on certain things in the industry, and he's always got some inside information he's trying to kind of allude to or talk about or something like that. So I go to Jeff Grubb for that kind of stuff. Same reason somebody may go to like Jason Schreier. He's kind of a name in that way. But before that, I mean, this thing has been around for, I didn't, when I was doing the research for this, I genuinely didn't realize that it had such a storied history. So for those that don't know, Giant Bomb was initially started by Jeff Gertzman. Jeff he's now got his own individual thing after he quit Giant Bomb, or he technically was fired. He was going to quit. He stated he was going to quit anyway, but he was fired, essentially, from the company that he started. Like, how does that happen? Well, I'll get into it, but, like, he started it after he was fired from GameSpot. He was let go from GameSpot because he gave Kane and Lynch 2 a really bad score. It is a very infamous story within the video game industry because we've always kind of said he used to work for GameSpot, which is very relevant to this particular story. But he used to work for GameSpot, and GameSpot, obviously a very long time running video game news site as well. And, the gaming industry has always, or the gaming community has always been like, yeah, these reviewers are all paid off. They're clearly giving games better scores than they deserve, and so on and so forth. This was not the case with Jeff Gertzman. He gave Kane and Lynch like a 3 or something out of 10. This is I think a Rockstar game, actually, back before they just did Grand Theft Auto. But it was known for being a very bad game, but like it had a very big marketing budget behind it. And like GameSpot not only had like Kane and Lynch like ads all over their website, but then they had a 3 out of 10 review. And so it was very obvious that like GameSpot had been getting a lot of money from the developers of Kane and Lynch. And now they had their big journalists giving the game a horrific score, and the game was known for being very bad. But like they had taken so much money from him that they had to fire him and take the review down. And like he was like, well, yeah, F this. Like, yeah, this is clearly a corrupt system. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm going to start my own thing. And that's how he started Giant Bomb, which essentially was creators or journalists getting together, doing podcasts, doing live streams, and trying to, create premium content for the video game industry before that was really a thing. They pioneered, paying for content creators to do more premium stuff. So you could actually sign up for, a premium tier subscription for Giant Bomb and get access to other shows that they would do and stuff like that for, $5 a month, which we now know as Patreon. Patreon is kind of the same thing. It does the exact same thing. And they kind of pioneered this thing. And when that happened, they were bought by CBS. This is 2008. So this was before this was before YouTube was really even that popular, right? YouTube wasn't really even a thing at that point. So CBS, there was really no way for a content creation spot of this size to really get any kind of you couldn't survive without a big company backing you. So eventually Giant Bomb gets bought by CBS. This is kind of a tumultuous time for them. They get passed around a little bit. And eventually they get partnered in with CNET and GameSpot. So CBS also buys GameSpot, the place that Jeff Gerstmann was originally fired from, and they package them together and sell them off to a company called Fandom, which essentially is, another management website kind of deal, trying to make these things profitable. They really bought CNET. Like GameSpot and Giant Bomb were just kind of accessories. They were add-ons to this deal. CNET was the really profitable thing. And essentially, according to Jeff Gerstmann, over time, GameSpot was always kind of considered the premium gaming website amongst Giant Bomb and, GameSpot. Giant Bomb essentially was given way less of the budget when allocated and had a very difficult time growing because of it. So essentially, the way Jeff Gerstmann quotes it is like, if they had $5 a budget for these guys, you give $4.75 to GameSpot trying to grow it, and you'd give 25 cents to Giant Bomb. Essentially, because they could never get the budget, they could never make more premium content, they just kind of became this podcasting service that really didn't have a lot of budget to really make anything bigger or better, and they eventually kind of waned. I'm not going to say died, because they've always been this very prominent voice in the gaming industry, or in the gaming, content space. But I had never really gotten into them until, Jeff Grubb kind of came along. But anyway, fast forward to last week, the 888th podcast, Giant Bomb podcast. The hosts kind of start making fun of brand safety. They start saying oh, you can't curse. They start making jokes about this. They kind of go on a long jokey diatribe of the opening of this show. It's very clear that, Fandom has told them, we really need you guys to be a lot more brand aware and brand safe. And then the episode gets immediately taken down as soon as it gets uploaded. Clearly something's effed up. Clearly something's not going right. There's clearly some animosity between Fandom and Giant Bomb. There's been no official statement from either one of them on exactly what happened here. But after that, Dan Reichert, which is a big personality on the show, quits. Jeff Grubb is fired. And as soon as I saw that happen, I was like, yep, it's the death. We have a couple of other personalities essentially come out and say, yeah, I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. And then we have Fandom making a public statement saying that they're going through some strategic realignment of the Giant Bomb brand. And that is kind of all they're going to be going to say about that. But it's clear that this is dead. If you have none of the personalities behind Giant Bomb anymore, I don't think that Giant Bomb is successful based on its brand name. I think Giant Bomb was successful based on its personalities, as any online show is. You really have to have some of that initial push from those personalities in order to get anybody in on anything. This is, unfortunate. It's unfortunate to lose, but to be quite honest, I don't know if, you want me to be freaking real here? I don't think Giant Bomb would have survived if it had not come in at the right time. And because I'm watching Giant Bomb and I'm struggling to get in it. I don't like Giant Bombcast that much. I understand why some people might, but I don't really care about it that much. And I look around and I see all these other content creators making podcasts that I do enjoy, and all these other content creators, making videos that I appreciate. And I look at Giant Bomb and I say, yeah, I don't really love that. And so I'm I don't know if Giant Bomb was ever going to survive. This is, I think, something that is just a cold, hard truth. Is yeah, a lot of people have a lot of fun memories of Giant Bomb, but I don't see Giant Bomb progressing in a way that, look at something like Kinda Funny, You have, they have a freaking studio, that they're going into. and doing, professional looking content, while Giant Bomb is, and I get it, they didn't have the budget, sure, but like they're just doing like, I can do what Giant Bomb does. I can do that. I am the only thing that's preventing me from doing the same thing that Giant Bomb is doing is having a full-time job, and basically that's it. Maybe talent and connections. Obviously connections. I don't have video game journalism connections within the industry, so I don't have the news, the hot breaking news. But like in a lot of ways, these guys weren't the hot breaking news guys. They were the video game take guys. What do I think about the newest great game, or what do I think about the newest news in the industry? And I can do that. Like anybody with a microphone and an internet connection can do that nowadays, and it makes it really hard to stand out, even for legacy people like this who have been around for a very long time. So I don't know if Giant Bomb was ever going to particularly succeed in a way that other big podcasts do. Here's the thing, is I see a lot of, big blow-up statements, hyperbolic things of, oh, the video game journalism / voices in the industry are dead. Like how can people keep going? Like this is such a massive loss for the industry. And I'm like, well, yeah, because it happened in the same week. It's this kind of thing is going to continue to happen. I think you're going to see gaming journalism sites that can't survive anymore kind of fall into the wayside. And also, like personalities like Giant Bomb, they're going to probably do the same, because their audience is going to die off and they're not going to keep up with the trends. Like this is something we've seen time and time and time again. And we'll continue to see. I think this is just exacerbated because it's two big names and it's two in the same week, that really kind of show off like, okay, well, clearly something isn't right. And I'm like, well, yeah, what is what is right in this space? Okay, let's objectively look at video game journalism. Let's just look at objective journalism, right? I mean, it's struggling. Like, you have to adapt in this modern era, and the modern era admittedly sucks for traditional journalism. Like, you just can't survive. You used to have a newspaper, and nobody would read that because we all went to the internet. And the newspaper died, and then we used to have video game journalism online, and then it's like, well, why would I read a freaking 10-page article on a topic when I can get the information I need from a tweet? And it's like, well, how do you monetize a tweet? Well, you really can't. And then you have well, you lose all the context behind this. It's like, well, most people don't care. Most people are going to read a headline, and that's it. And so you have to adapt, and you have to make your content horrifically scummy and, appeal to base human instincts, because that's exactly what everybody is doing, right? You have to have a title or, a headline that's inflammatory and does not give the reader any context outside of, like a leading context. It's and then you still hold the threat of like somebody just reading the article in 15 minutes and then just tweeting the actual important bits that people care about, and your article is worthless now. Like, all they have to do is read that tweet, and it's like it's over, or they have to go on a forum and somebody summarized it or something like that. Like, I think it's incredibly difficult for journalism in general to survive now. And, you have places like the New York Times making it so that you have to pay a monthly subscription to get into it, or, the Washington Post doing something similar, and so on and so forth. Like, even the premier big journalism websites, they are struggling with this now. If you think a niche video game website that is focusing on gaming journalism is going to survive, I think you got another thing coming. That's I think obvious. Is it death of the video game journalism? I mean, kinda. I mean, if we really want to answer the question, kind of. It is death of video game journalism the way that we know it, like the traditional ways of video game journalism. Is it the actual death of video game journalism? No, there will always be journalism in some sense. There will always be somebody trying to communicate the news. Will it be harder to do that in a professional manner moving forward, in a non-hyperbolic, non-inflammatory method or manner? I mean, I think so. Yeah, I think that's what kind of you're moving towards. With the death of these sites, with the death of these more nuanced and long-form takes, it's just harder to compete in a space. And I mean, take it from me, the guy who's doing it right now and can't compete at all. It's hard. I can't imagine what it's like trying to stake a living on it. So is it death of the video game journalism? No. Kind of, but no. Is it death of traditional video game journalism? Yes. I think you're going to see more and more of these sites struggle and more of these sites fall to the wayside and die. And that is very unfortunate, but it is the unfortunate reality. Next up, another depressing death of, right, is layoffs at EA. 2 Respawn projects canceled in the process. So I used to, when this podcast first started, we were going through a massive layoff spree in the video game industry, right? Kind of stopped talking about it because it just became, 1, depressing, and 2, redundant. It was like, okay, yeah, another company lays off 1 million people. Another company, another. It just kept going. And this is really, let's be real, this is notable because we know of projects that were canceled. I'm going to try to get into a little bit more of it, but 400 people at EA were laid off. 100 of those were from Respawn. So the other 300 were from other little teams scattered across EA, whether it be gaming or not, I suppose. Could be HR they could have laid off, who knows. But two projects were canceled, only one of which we really know what it was, which was a Titanfall universe extraction shooter. Seems to be people are really trying to get in on that. Extraction shooter based on Marathon recently. What I see here is, Codemasters, I should say this first. Codemasters also confirmed to have suffered from the layoffs, and, also has some reasons behind that. But I think that there are clear understanding reasons or underlying reasons as to why this happened. From what I'm gathering, from what I see, this is likely an aftermath of a poor financial quarter. Their previous financial quarter, we reported here, and by reported I mean I just talked about, that Dragon Age and Football Club 25, or FC 25, did not perform as expected. This led to a 16% stock drop-off for EA. Which EA is, we all know EA is like one of the most corporate companies ever. I think we kind of forgot about that over a long period of time, even though they had a very big reputation for that for a very long time. Voted the worst company in the world or something like that, like 3 years running or something like that. But 16% is huge for them. They're a Fortune 500 company. I don't think we ever think about that. But EA is I think it's almost like a Fortune 100 company. It is a very successful bean counting company that is very profit driven, very big on that, right? So a 16% drop off is massive for them. So this is just them tightening their belts. This is, what do you do to try and increase profits when you're down? You lay people off. That's the easiest thing to do. We've been over that many times before covering other layoffs. Codemasters was another studio that was confirmed to have hit with layoffs. I assume pretty much all of their studios were probably hit with layoffs if 300 other people were laid off outside of Respawn. This is probably to have to do with, they lost one of their big brands, WRC. So Codemasters, if you didn't know, is like their racing developer. They bought them a couple of years back to develop racing games. And WRC is one of their bigger brands. They lost it. And then a couple of their recent projects didn't perform financially as well. That's just the other studio that basically confirmed, yeah, we got hit with layoffs. And it's like, okay, I can see why when we look back at the numbers here. This is sad. It's always sad. But I think people are specifically looking at this and they're like, oh, I think the big headline here is, well, we lost a Titanfall shooter, extraction shooter. And I think that this headline is probably being misconstrued and not really thought about correctly. Specifically, if you didn't remember, Apex Legends is a Titanfall universe shooter. So when you hear Titanfall universe extraction shooter, I would not immediately jump to the Titanfall 1 and 2 that you're kind of thinking of and think fondly of. I mean, I've played Titanfall 2. It's one of the best first-person shooter campaigns, single-player campaigns I've ever played. Definitely understand the love behind that for that game. Very well-made shooter. It's clearly not going to be that. Like, I think that brand is pretty much dead. And when you say Titanfall universe, you are saying a very large thing, which is also including Apex Legends. I would say it would probably be closer to a tone of Apex Legends than it would be a tone of Titanfall, because guess what was a major success out of those two? Apex Legends. Guess what wasn't? Titanfall. So like, you're probably not going to model your new game off of the game that was a commercial failure. You're probably going to model it after the one that makes you millions or billions of dollars a year. I think that's the obvious answer, right? So, people mourning the death of this Titanfall game, you are mourning the death of another, live service Apex Legends game. It's very different, right? So, yeah. I think I'd be more interested to see what the other game was that was canceled. Surprised we didn't hear about that, to be quite honest. But it looks like a lot of these people were repurposed. They were moved to other teams that were on these projects, specifically supporting Apex Legends or the next Star Wars Jedi game, which Respawn also makes, which are both obviously very big money makers for them. So I think that's kind of the big takeaway here for this story. I think, again, very sad to see layoffs. I think when you're at a company like EA, who's going to be obviously very bean countery, very profit and stock price driven, you're going to probably see this a lot when you're not doing very hot. And I think that has to do a lot with Football Club underperforming. That was the big underperformer for them. So again, you can go back and listen to that. I think I talked about it a few episodes ago. It's not Dragon Age that was the financial sinkhole here. It was Football Club underperforming. That was, they were expecting a lot of money from that, and they didn't get anywhere near as much. So that's your big takeaway from that. But yeah, hopefully everybody who lost their jobs here finds a nice place to land safely and get paid and continue to survive and pay rent. Definitely sucks. So unfortunate news there as well. Next off, this is a much smaller story, much smaller, but I think I like small. I like small. I like to delve into the heavy facts and the financials a lot, but like, this is, it's nice to have a nice little breather, just kind of talk about something real quick and short real quick. But this is something I thought was worth noting. Sony acquiring a new studio. Always a big news. This one, not as many people talking about, but that's because we haven't seen anything from it. I think Sony acquired a bunch of studios a while back, and we didn't know anything about it. So it was like, okay, cool. I guess we'll see if this is a worthwhile thing to care about when they actually make a game. But they have acquired Team LFG, which is an acronym standing for Looking for Group. It is, a common online, terminology or acronym that you'll see in forums or game searching places. The thing that really stands out here is it is comprised of ex-Bungie, Destiny, Halo, League of Legends, Fortnite, Roblox, and Rec Room developers, which kind of is a wide swath, obviously, of experience with very different, very different game types. So you say, how does that work together? How does that happen? And it's like, well, apparently it doesn't very well, or about as well as you'd expect, because the studio has described their first game as a team-based action game that draws inspiration from fighting games, platformers, MOBAs, life sims, and frog-type games. So clearly they're trying to kind of bait you with that. They want you to be like, what the frick is this game? This game sounds crazy. And I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's something different. Surely that it is interesting that Sony bought them. This team was incubated inside of Bungie, so that's probably why. But that being said, I would think this game is not going to be some new genre of game. It will probably be something live servicey, obviously. I think, though, when I look at this, I see a lot of shades of Concord. It is a studio that they bought that has no track record outside of the people working on it, and those people were from legendary developers with very good track records. Concord, the studio behind Concord Firewalk Studios, was known for Call of Duty and Bungie devs. That was kind of their big thing. Their big claim to fame was, well, we had a lot of people who were working on these really popular titles. It's like, okay, well, these guys do too. We still haven't seen anything from them. We're saying this game is going to be this really big deal. I feel like I've heard that before. I think I've heard that before. I think it was called Concord, which was obviously a massive, massive, massive failure. So, it is kind of crazy to see just history repeat itself in this way. I'm still interested to see what this is, but, I just wanted to point that out and thought that was interesting that, one, Sony acquired a new team, but two, it sounds so much like the exact same scenario. So that's all I really had to say about that. Very short, sweet, simple, to the point. And finally, what I consider to be the meat and potatoes of our news segment this week, or this episode, is Microsoft raising prices on consoles and games. This is doom and gloom. I see a lot of hyperbole behind this. This is the end of an era. This is, unfathomable. What is Xbox thinking? Are they just jumping off a cliff? This is suicide. What is this madness? And I don't know. I don't follow that exact trajectory of thinking, but I understand it to an extent. So let's get into it. So at the onset, we have price hikes across the board. There are a lot of obviously items. This is not just for the consoles and games, it's for accessories as well. We're going to focus primarily on the consoles and games here because I think that's really where the crux of the conversation is. Who really cares if they increase the price of their headset by $10? That's not really what we're talking about. There are alternatives to that, and I don't think it's necessarily what the Xbox brand is known for. So, and honestly, some of the headsets didn't even get price increases. Those are their lowest tier. Nobody really cares about headsets, but still, so we're just going to focus on the main, the beef, the meat here. So let's start off with the Xbox Series S 512 gigabyte is going to $379.99. It was $300, so an increase of $80. Xbox Series S 1 terabyte, so same processing power, all those inside components, just bigger hard drive. We have is now $429. It was $349. So an increase of 70, or excuse me, also 80, not 70. I was looking at, wasn't including the 99s there. Xbox Series X Digital is now $549.99. It was $449.99, so an increase of $100. The Xbox Series X is just regular, so you have a disc drive, is $599. It was $499, so an increase of $100. And then the big one that everybody seems to be pointing to is the Xbox Series X 2 terabyte Galaxy Black is now $729.99. It was $600. Which is honestly kind of surprising to me. No, it's not. Never mind. So an increase of $130. Wow, yikes. This, of course, makes it... This is Xbox's highest tier console. This is what was launched back about 5 years ago, and it is now more expensive than a PS5 Pro, which is sitting at $700 or $699.99. They've also increased their games from $6.99 to $7.99, so increase of $10, kind of in line with what Nintendo is doing with Mario Kart World. So, some controllers are also being increased from $10 to $20 depending on the model, the regular controller or like the Pro model controller. At the onset, let's look at this here. This is, according to their statement, media-wise, quote, the decision was made given market conditions and the rising costs of development. So this is short form for tariffs. Tariffs are the excuse here. Obviously, rising costs of development have been a ongoing excuse for increased prices in video games. This is, I think understandable and also BS at the same time. This is an excuse. This is something that obviously Microsoft could have done without. They didn't need to raise the prices on these consoles. Specifically, I think the thing everybody loves to point out is console prices typically decrease over time, not increase. This is the first generation ever that console prices have increased over time. Infamously, or famously, I suppose, the GameCube eventually was on sale for $50. There was a promotion towards the end of the GameCube's life where you could pick it up for $50. Obviously did not launch lower than that, so that would be crazy. But normally the way the gaming industry works is over time we get better components to put in hardware. Those components make the previous components cheaper, and therefore it is easier to manufacture these consoles at lower prices, and therefore you can lower the price of your console, get it in, get more people in, get a larger install base, and then eventually you have a generational leap where you put that new hardware into your console, and it's a much better device, and it costs a lot more, and so on and so forth. It's what we're used to, right? Here's the problem with that now, is component costs don't go down anymore. At least in this generation, it is an anomaly for component costs to go down. Component costs or components in general are being developed and produced at a much higher click than usual in terms of their advancement. Like how fast they're getting better, per se. Here's the problem, is those components that typically make the consoles cheaper over time are like the processors, the chips, right? And if you have been following the news much, you'll probably, as soon as I say chips, you'll be like, oh, frick. Oh, yeah, aren't those, like, hard to come by now? Like, isn't that, like, a problem to get chips? And, like, hasn't it been for a long time, like, ever since the pandemic, and it's only gotten worse? And it's like, yeah, pretty much. Like those components are now really difficult to get because you have, obviously, during the pandemic, it was really hard to get. I mean, gamers know. Like the 1090X, I think, was the big chip everybody was trying to get a hold of during the pandemic. That was being resold for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars. It would already cost like thousands of dollars, and then it was just being resold at an exorbitantly high price. But like those chips are like, they were being used for like mining Bitcoin and stuff like that, which was a big thing during the pandemic. And then now we have an AI boom that is like, and well, we also had the supply chain shortage during the pandemic as well. We were frantically trying to get chips because everything requires a chip now, from your car to your refrigerator to everything. So like we all need chips for everything we're producing. And then AI all of a sudden took off, and now everybody needs a bundle of chips. And when I say a bundle, I mean a lot more than a bundle. Whatever your mental vision of a bundle is, it's way bigger than that. But they need a lot of chips to try and power these AI models that they're producing at these big companies. So these processing chips, which are a main ingredient for these consoles, obviously, in every computer, are now being, well, they're just really hard to find. They're really hard to get, and it means that the prices for them are incredibly high still. And so when your prices on these devices are high already, and you're probably selling them at a loss initially to get people in. It's typically how consoles work, is you sell them at a loss, and then people buy using your ecosystem. You get a cut of everything that's sold in your ecosystem, and that's how you make money. Is like, okay, well, you can't really expect these console producers to continue to take a loss like half a decade later and then like still have a hard time producing these devices. Here's the thing, is these chips and these devices are now 5 years old. So like it's really not a great excuse to increase prices, because you look at these prices and you say, okay, I can pay, what is it? $30 more to get an Xbox Series X 2 terabyte Galaxy Black version, which is a 5-year-old console. The components inside of it are like 5 years old, or I can get a PS5 Pro, which is so much better because it's so much newer. It's using better components and it's less money. Like, hello, of course you're going to just buy a PS5 Pro, especially on top of the fact that, like, obviously Xbox is a dying ecosystem. They've clearly shifted to like a Game Pass model where hardware is not their forefront anymore. Duh. This is a no-brainer. Like, you're not going to buy these consoles anymore. It's obvious you're not going to do that. Okay, so that's when we get into a lot of like, well, okay, so this is a dumb move. Why would Microsoft do this? Well, first off, I don't think they're going to be the only people to do it. I think Sony, this makes it inevitable. Guess what Sony is going to do? They're going to increase their prices across the board for all their consoles and all their accessories and all their games. Because Microsoft did it and Nintendo did it, and now guess what that allows Sony to do? The exact same thing. So this is basically confirmation. If you want a PS5 Pro, if you want a PS5, if you want any accessory to go along with your PlayStation 5, you should get it. Because this is going to happen. Why? Because Sony has already hiked prices in the UK and Europe. Okay? They've already done it in other countries. The US has now it's basically given, because of tariffs, it's given every company an excuse to say, yeah, well, we're increasing prices for tariffs. And guess what those prices are never going to do? Come back down. They are never going to go back down. Even if the tariffs go away, the prices will remain the exact freaking same. So this is just an excuse, because for a long time, we've heard developers and we've heard publishers talk about the increasing costs of games and how, like, it is the margins for these things are becoming a lot tighter, because development costs are now going into the hundreds of millions of dollars. And, like, even though games are selling a lot, it still means that you still have to recoup several $100 million before you get you start going into the black. So, like, this has become a very difficult thing for publishers to do, and they've been pushing for these price increases for a very long time. Now, what gamers are used to is we have like maybe 2 generations in between a price hike, right? So games used to be $50. PlayStation 1, they were $50. PlayStation 2, they were $50. PlayStation 3, we increased from $50 to $60. okay? And I think a lot of gamers kind of understood that. It had been a while. Inflation happens. We all kind of understand how the economy works. It makes sense. Okay, games are now $60. PlayStation 3, games are $60. PlayStation 4, games are $60. PlayStation 5 2020 is the first generation to see a $70 game. Did the research here. 2020 was the first game that was $70, and that was the first game to ever be announced to do that, was NBA 2K21. Funny enough. And they had the PlayStation 4 version was going to cost $60, and the PlayStation 5 version was going to cost $70. And so we kind of started seeing a trickle of $70 games come in at that price, and it became kind of a normal thing for games to do that. Now we're seeing an $80 increase, and we are not even through a singular generation. I think publishers, based on what I've been hearing, are basically saying, yeah, that $70 jump was not enough. Like, we really need a higher price from these games moving forward, and I think they'd love it to be higher, to be quite honest, but I think 80 is probably a price point that they're okay with. And I think that you look at this and you say, well, as a gamer, I can handle maybe one or two big games being $80, but I don't want every game to be $80. And, like, I get that. And as a casual gamer who only looks at, or let's say a gamer who only looks at the big releases, and I'm not just talking about Call of Duty. Let's say we're including, I don't know, Horizon Zero Dawn and Uncharted, or, Mario, something like that. You're kind of diversifying a little bit beyond the generic, I play Madden and Call of Duty, kind of deal. I think you get to a point where it's a lot harder to justify that, that extra $10, because now it's a lot of money constantly hitting you in the face to pay for things at that price. But I think if you look at like a hardcore gaming perspective, like me, I'm not really that upset, right? Because I feel like I have a lot of games to play. I don't need to buy a game day one. And I think that there's a lot of games at a lot of varying price points, and I think we're going to start seeing that kind of happen a lot more in the future, right? And we're already kind of starting to see that. We're seeing games go above $80 with like premium editions. Why don't you pay another $20 to get in early for a week or 2 or 3 weeks or whatever the case is, 3 days, and then you get like an extra skin. Like we've already got those that go above $100 in some cases, and then you have games that are lower than $60 or lower than $80 or $70 that are still considered very good games. Like, we're going to talk about it in a second. Clair Obscure, which is a great game that is considered to be, a full-fledged title, but is $50, a much more affordable price point than, say, something like $70 or $80. And then, of course, you always have your indie titles, which are around $15 to $20, a much more budget experience for a much more budget title. I think that you're probably going to look around and then obviously you have sales, which knock these prices down. I think you're going to start looking around and saying, well, yeah, I don't really want to pay $80 for a game. I'll just settle for a $20 game or a $50 game right now because that's what's within my budget. And it's a very nuanced conversation, and I hope that this is a model that the game industry kind of, if we're going to keep increasing the price like this, I hope that we kind of start moving in a direction where it's like, yeah, Grand Theft Auto is going to be a $100 game, but it's clearly a game that you're going to be playing for hundreds of hours, and it's super high quality, and it's one of the best out there. And so it's like we really can afford to charge $100 because the game is really going to give you that much value. And, like here's a Clair Obscure, which may not be the same, polish as a Grand Theft Auto, but it's like it's still a very good game, and maybe it's not going to give you 100 hours worth of content, but it'll give you like 30 solid hours. It's 50. Like I think kind of a varied price model structure in the gaming industry would work, and I think I'm kind of seeing that happening as we move forward just naturally, which is very good, because people are trying to stand out and they're trying to make their product a little bit more appealing in various ways, and a price point is one way to do that. So like I think that's great. When I look around, I see people freaking out. I see this is a common thing I've seen thrown around, and it is, I think, a little bit of an exaggeration. They say, well, we've only had 2 years since a price increase, $70 to $80. It's only been 2 years, and I immediately recoiled at that, and I was like, whoa, what the frick are we talking about here? I have no idea what we're talking about. And like I said, first game to do that was in 2020. A lot of games on the PlayStation 5 started charging $70. Microsoft, as a publisher, didn't do that until 2 years ago. So when we're talking about a $10 price increase for Microsoft games, we are literally only talking about a price increase for Microsoft games. This was in 2023. The first Microsoft title to ever cost $70 was Redfall. If you remember Redfall, it was like a game that averaged like a 30 Metacritic score or something freaking super low. It was absolutely abysmal in terms of, I think it was not as bad as people said it was. It was definitely a retaliatory review bomb kind of thing. The game's not great, sure, but it's not like the worst game I've ever played in my entire life. But anyway, you can find that out if you have Game Pass. You can play all sorts of games without having to be monetarily invested. But anyway, so when people are like, it's only been 2 years, I can't believe Microsoft is going up another $10. It's like, well, really, you got a good deal from Microsoft for longer than anybody else. Like everybody else was charging $70 for their, or Sony was charging $70 for their games, which is where most people were playing their games. I think Nintendo only recently started charging $70, very, very recently. So like, I think Microsoft gets a pass here. Like, I think it's a little hyperbolic to say they only jumped 2 years, like the jump was only 2 years ago, because we as a gaming community have been paying $70 for like at least 5, so you know, like that, or for at max 5. So like it makes a lot more sense to me to see like everybody kind of jumping pretty quick, because I think, you know, these tariffs are killing people. The inflation is super high, and we have been very slow to adapt to inflation and price increases within this industry. So, you know, like I genuinely think it's like probably okay for the games for everybody to hit 80 if we are all universally doing it, if we have this varied price structure, if there are so many games out there that you can wait. The thing is so many people don't wait to play games. Like the vast majority of sales for every game are happening day one. You know, like that's the vast majority of sales. Everybody is trying to play a game as soon as it comes out. People don't like to wait, and that is a human flaw, it seems. There are certainly ways that you can avoid not playing a game day one. It's just called waiting. But like, people don't like to do that. People want to be a part of that conversation. And I get that. I do too. I love being a part of the conversation. It was like genuinely devastating to me that like I had to go out of town the day Clair Obscure came out. I was like, oh, frick. Like, dang it, I'm going to be so behind the conversation. And then I got sick, and I was like, oh, frick, I'm really going to be behind the conversation. And here I am, frickin' 2 weeks after the game comes out, and I'm like halfway through it. So, like, you know, and everybody else is beating it or something, and I'm like, oh, frick, I'm way behind. But anyway, like, I understand that draw, but it's like, bro, If you're going to complain about the price, and this is clearly like an industry standard that we're moving forward with for likely forever, you need to either be like, yeah, I'm not willing to pay these prices and just stop playing video games and start going to the park or something, or, you know, like you wait for a sale. Like, I think that's the normal thing to do. So, you know, is this deserved? Is it too soon? I think that it's a nuanced conversation. I think it's sooner than what we're used to as a gaming community, right? It is a economically difficult time for everyone because inflation is so high, wages are stagnant, et cetera, et cetera. So like putting $100, which is essentially what you're going to be doing, paying full price for a game now, putting $100 or nearly $100 down on a game every single time you want to play a new game is a massive ask. And I think people are feeling it, and I think it's really unfortunate, but it is, I think, based on everything I've seen, a necessary eventuality. Like, it had to happen at some point. I've said this a million times, gaming is not a cheap hobby. Gaming is for people with a lot of time and a lot of money. That's just the facts. And if you can't handle that, it is what it is. You can find games that work within that frame, though. And I think, you don't have to freak out about it. Here's a bigger and better question, I think. Is Xbox stupid? I think the answer to that is also somewhat nuanced. It is not a definitive Xbox is the dumbest people ever because they increased these prices on these consoles that clearly they should not be increased because they're outdated pieces of tech, and now like they are objectively a worse deal than going with a console that is objectively better in like every way. Sure, I think this was an optical failure on Game Pass's or on Xbox's part. I think it's an optical failure here. The optics behind this is horrific because they're the first to do it. Obviously, Nintendo gets a pass for what they're charging for their console because it's a new console. And I think it's honestly a reasonably priced console. People like to complain about the price of the Switch 2 as well, but I think it's a reasonably priced console for what it is. And they did not increase the price of the console due to tariffs. I think that's because you have a lot of units that are already in the States, and they didn't have to pay tariffs on those. And once those units are gone, if the tariffs remain, you will likely see an increase in price. But I think, I think Sony is bound to do this eventually, especially now that Microsoft has done it. Nintendo has kind of opened the floodgates for this kind of a conversation and this kind of an increase due to, obviously their console and their increased game prices, which they are also taking the varied price approach. They have a $10 game coming out, even though that looks silly. They have a $10 game coming out of the release of the Switch 2 and a $70 and an $80. So the prices are skewed based on how much value they think the game is bringing to you. So, even Nintendo is kind of doing that. And I think that's a really interesting thing for Nintendo to do, being the company that doesn't ever discount their games ever. They just kind of assume their products are premium and they don't care if, you want to wait for a sale or not because there will never be a sale. But anyway, this is clearly something Microsoft should have waited on. They should not have been the first to do this. They should have waited for Sony to do this. I think being a part of a multi-trillion-dollar company or just a trillion-dollar company, I think you have the capital to sit on this and not have to. And it's not like that many people are running out right now to buy Xboxes anyway. Nobody's freaking playing Xbox. If you're going to play Xbox, just play it on Game Pass. And I think that's another reason Microsoft was just like, yeah, we don't give a frick, is because their strategy is Game Pass. Their strategy is freaking Game Pass. Everything is an Xbox now. If you don't buy their console, so be it. Like, they don't care. Like, as long as you get in to the Xbox Game Pass ecosystem, they don't really mind. And they're trying to make it as easy as humanly possible to do that. And I think, eventually they're going to have some dongle that you put in your TV, and it's going to be, the Game Pass dongle that everybody's going to have in their TV, and it's going to be the obvious way to go and use Game Pass and Xbox moving forward. I think this is weird because they, if I was like, this is their last console generation and they're just going to be moving into being a publisher and being, like a Game Pass provider, I would say, sure, frickin' jack the prices up, kill your hardware, who cares? But they've already committed to producing the next generation hardware that is apparently the biggest generational leap of all time. I'll believe it when I see it. I just simply cannot believe that. So, like, they clearly still believe in hardware to an extent. This seems like such an odd move. It seems like such an odd move. It does seem like a suicidal move on trying to kill off their hardware side. But like I know they've been trying to do that for years now because of Game Pass. Like, they've clearly made that evident when they're like, yeah, we're putting our games on PlayStation. Everything's coming to PlayStation day one. Everything's coming to Game Pass day one. Why would you ever need a console when you can play Game Pass on PC? Like, I don't own an Xbox, and I play every Game Pass game that comes out on my Steam Deck because I can. Like, I stream it. So it's like, it just seems like an odd move based on what they've already announced and based on, like, just in general how the market is right now. And it's an optical bad move. It makes Sony look better. I don't get it. I don't understand why they did it now, of all times. I don't understand why they felt like they needed to do it now. I still think, like, was this inevitable? More than likely, yeah, I think it's inevitable. But, like, I think it's odd. It's certainly odd, and it's a telltale sign that, like, the video game industry is just going to get more expensive. I think this is not the end. You're clearly going to see Sony upgrade their prices on things, and I think you're going to see even higher price hikes in the future. I think we've probably hit 80 is like your cap for now. I don't foresee, like, in 5 years, they're like, okay, well, games are now $90. Like, I think we're going to be sitting here at 80 for a good while, and they're probably just going to find other ways to get another several dollars out of you in the game, with whether it be a pre-order edition or in-game purchases or DLC or whatever the case is. Like, that's kind of where we're gonna be for a while, I think. I think we're going to 2 price increases so quickly back to back. Given the history of the industry, I think we're probably okay. Don't freak out thinking there's going to be another one anytime soon. I think we're probably okay, if I had to guess. I do think that this whole diatribe, this whole conversation around this increase is a little hyperbolic. It's a little reactionary. And it's a little aggressive from what I've seen, but I do understand why people are frustrated. I do understand that, like, it is not the smartest move on Xbox to do it the way they did. So, like, I understand both sides here. I think Microsoft made a move that I think is obvious. I think that gamers are reacting to a move that I think is not optimal to them and could have been handled better in multiple different ways, and I think both sides are being a little silly, to be quite honest, but I think both sides are right in doing what they're doing and reacting the way they're reacting. So, my nuanced fence-sitter take, I suppose, is everybody's right and everybody's wrong. It's so wonderful being a moderate. And having no strong opinions whatsoever. But that's just reality, right? I hate to be the bland, boring dude saying let's fence sit, but, like, it's just reality. Nothing is black and white. So I try to see both sides of it. But anyway, I think that's the big heavy thing I think people have been talking about. Obviously that and Grand Theft Auto. So, glad I got to talk about that. But that's it for the news. That's it for the news, ladies and gentlemen. Impressions are a bit light this week. I even have some impressions kind of sitting in the chamber, just in case something like this week kind of happened where I wasn't really able to get around to games, and I was like, oh, well, like, I have some games I've been holding off on talking about. I can just talk about those, but I really been trying to get the podcast down in time. Every time I record, I end up recording for like freaking 3 hours. The past several episodes have been like 2.5 to 3 hours, and I'm like, that's just too much. Like, I would really love these episodes to be like an hour and a half, just me. It's just me yapping. Like, that's just, I feel like a lot, like, for one guy to just never shut up for 2.5 to 3 hours. So, I'm pretty pretty content with like an hour and a half, but I always go on for way longer than I expect. So in this case, I did not add those, and I'm already looking at like, I'm not even in an hour and a half yet. I'm actually pretty proud of myself. We've been pretty concise this episode. I'm pretty happy about that. But because of that, I have not incorporated any of my other impressions here, and I have not completed the game, but I have started Clair Obscure Expedition 33. This is the big game of the moment, and I emphasize that because I think the conversation around this game is overwhelmingly positive. This game is currently sitting at a 92 on Metacritic. It is the highest user score rated game of all time on Metacritic at the time of recording. That is some insane stuff, considering that I saw this game as like a 78. Like before it came out, I was like, there's no way this game is that good, because it looked kind of mid in trailers. It looked like it, not mid necessarily, but it looked like it could have been pretty, like, it had the potential to be good and it had the potential to be mid. So like I was pretty surprised when I saw that this game was being reviewed so highly. This is a French RPG, kind of based off the JRPG formula, or an FRPG, as some people are affectionately calling it now. This is a game that has been so successful, it sold 3 million copies within its first 2 weeks, which is insane for a game of this size and from a small studio in France. These are all ex-Ubisoft devs, who clearly Ubisoft doesn't know what the frick they doing over there, because they let all these guys go when they made this great game, and so good that the French Prime Minister talked about it. He congratulated the development studio on their success with the game, because France doesn't see too many huge successes like this come out outside of Ubisoft. So like, this is also a small development studio of about 30 people making a game like this, which, like, when you start playing it, you're like, dang, 30 people worked on this? That's kind of insane. The conversation around this game has been overwhelmingly positive. I was like, oh, frick, I can't play this when it came out. Like I said, I was sick. I was out of town, so, like, I didn't really feel like playing it, or couldn't play it. So, like, I finally got around to playing it, and I was like, dang, this game is great. But it's really hard for me to like look at the conversation around it and be like, I think you guys are being a little exaggeratory on how good this game is, right? A 92 to me on Metacritic is, you are game of the year. And I'm not saying this game isn't, okay? But like, every time I hear people talk about this, I hear people say, this is game of the year. Like, no shot. This is game of. I think this game is going to win game of the year. I've even heard somebody on a podcast I was listening to was like, this game is my top 10 of all time. I haven't even beat it yet. And this game is in my top 10 of all time. Like, I think, these people talking about this game, it's been insane. It's been so overwhelmingly positive to a point where I'm playing this game and I'm like, it must be perfect. There must be no problems with it. There must be like a 92 on Metacritic. I genuinely see that as like, this must be an insanely good game with very few flaws. If you are above a 90, that has to be the case. And I'm definitely finding some cracks in the armor here. So, like, that's the initial intro, right? Again, I'm only halfway through the game, so there's 3 acts. I'm in Act 2. I'd like to think I'm about halfway through it. And let me just start off with going through the game in general. It is a very interesting story. So it is a story about a paintress, or not specifically a paintress, but a group of people who are going to kill a paintress. This paintress is responsible for writing a number on a big mural in the sky, or on a big tree or something. I think it's just like a big tree. But she writes a number, and every year the number ticks down, and that number If you're aged below that number, you survive. If you're above it, you die. So it's been many, many years since this has happened, and expeditions continue to go out and try to sacrifice their last year of living to kill this paintress so that, you know, the cycle can stop. You know, like we can finally live again beyond the age of 33 or whatever the number is. So this is obviously Expedition 33. So everybody here is 33 or younger. And, you know, they go and they, you know, immediately get over to the place where the paintress is, and, you know, like everything falls apart. It is this massive, you know, like this massively dangerous locale. And, you know, like then they all have to recover and, you know, kind of navigate their way through this very fanciful, a lot more abstract world than I was expecting. And I didn't know anything about this game really before it came out. It's a lot more abstract and fanciful than I was expecting it to be. And which is totally fine. It's just something I kind of had to adjust to. But the story, I think, is insanely intriguing. You know, like I think moving on to the main bulk of this game, the combat is absolutely excellent. It is a turn-based, kind of Mario RPG-esque, like active reaction combat in which, like, obviously it's a turn-based game, so you're choosing the moves of each character, and then, like, when you are attacked by an enemy, you can dodge, and you can do a perfect dodge or a regular dodge, or you can parry. And if you parry all of an enemy's attacks, you'll be able to do a counterattack for free and do some massive damage. So a lot of people are comparing it to Sekiro. I think it's incredibly over-exaggerative comparison. I understand the comparison, but I wouldn't personally say that, because I feel like I have seen that kind of mechanic in Paper Mario before. So it's really weird to be like, oh yeah, well, it's just like Sekiro. It's like, well, it's just like other active turn-based RPGs that kind of incorporate similar mechanics. But really what sets this game apart is every single character has a really cool combat system that is unique to that particular party member. So like, for instance, one character has the ability, like she's like your magic, she's kind of like your mage, and so every spell she casts, she gets like a tick. So like for a tick, like a tally, and you know, like if she casts a fire spell, she'll get a fire tally, and then like if she casts an ice spell, she'll get an ice tally, and so on and so forth. And then you can use those tallies to create like higher damage versions of other spells. So like if you have a fire and an ice tick, you can use those ticks to then like make a lightning spell even more powerful or something along those lines. Sometimes it's like if you have 2 earth ticks, you can do a second move after this move, you know, like, you know, if you use this move, you know, and that kind of thing. Another one is like, you have like charges. So like certain moves do certain charges to your character. If you end up, you know, getting 10 charges, you can do a super move that can, you know, do massive damage to an enemy, and so on and so forth. Like every character kind of has this individual combat system that you need to master, and is really interesting and in-depth. And like those are your first 2 party members that you get, and have objectively like the most simplistic combat systems. The others have much more in-depth combat systems that are, again, unique to them, and like you can easily use in conjunction with other party members, and like you can get moves that you pick up, or, you know, throughout the environment that like you can you know, like experiment with, specifically like perks. Like one of them's like you know, you get an extra like move on like when you start a turn or something like that, or you deal extra 25% extra damage or something like that. And if you do enough battles with that particular perk equipped, then you can equip it permanently to every other character. And there's so many details and so many like build, like you can really get in depth on this. Okay. Like I feel like I've already gone off on like 5 different tangents, just talking about like 2 different mechanics in this game. None of these particular mechanics are overwhelming. Like once you kind of sit down and try to understand them, they're very easy to get. It just takes a second to kind of understand and get used to them, and then you can really start min-maxing your combat. None of this is required, but you can definitely do that. I think the game balancing is superb. Every area I walk into, like I immediately when I first start fighting enemies, I'm like, oh frick, I'm kind of getting the crap kicked out of me, and then like very quickly, because this is a 30-hour RPG, like the progression is very speedy in terms of like normally a JRPG is like 100 hours or whatever. Like you're feeling like your level ups aren't very impactful. In this one, your level ups are pretty impactful, and like I always felt like I was in the right place at the right time. Like I would get into an area, I would start fighting enemies, I would get the crap kicked out of me, I would level up 2 or 3 times, and then all of a sudden I would start holding my own. And then I would level up 2 or 3 times more, and by the time I was at the end of an area, not only had I gotten more powerful and I was like killing enemies much easier, but I was also mastering moves. So I was dodging more effectively, and I was parrying more effectively. So I was taking way less damage too, which is a very big part of this game. Like if you are like this has been a big point of contention for me playing this game. I'm playing it on my Steam Deck through Game Pass, which if you don't know what that means, it means I'm having to stream it via the internet, which has 2 distinct disadvantages. One, which is very much a pet peeve of mine, is I cannot walk away from this game for like more than 5 to 10 minutes because the game will shut off. You can't leave your game idle for very long when you're streaming, which is understandable because like Microsoft only has so many servers available and they don't want to frickin' waste their bandwidth pushing a game to somebody who's not actually playing it, right? When somebody else could be using that server. So I understand. But it's very frustrating because whenever I feel like I have to start playing this game, like I have to lock in. Like I cannot go get a snack. I can't go to the bathroom because if it takes me more than 5 minutes, I'm going to lose all my progress if I haven't saved or if the game hasn't auto-saved or whatever the case is. So I freaking hate that. The other is the game is the frustration I feel playing this game is very dependent on my internet connection for the day. So if my internet is conking out, if it's not doing very well, this game is insanely frustrating because this game requires you to learn parries, to learn dodges, and to get them right. And if you're not, you're going to be screwed. Like I genuinely think that later in the game, like if you are not learning how to, I think early in the game I was like, okay, all I have to really do is dodge. I really don't have to parry anything. And then eventually I was like, no, I really have to start learning how to parry because I started getting really good at dodging and I was perfect dodging everything. And a perfect dodge is the same timing as a parry. So like if I'm perfect dodging everything, I should just start parrying, because then I can get massive damage on these enemies. Well, like it started getting to a point like during bosses and stuff that I was like, oh, like I have to start parrying. Like if I don't parry, these boss fights are going to take forever. So like the problem with that is timing on that is very like tight. So like if my internet connection isn't very good, then it becomes a miserable experience and it's just no fun at all. But like that's where I think a lot of people are also enjoying this game is this game does have challenge and it does force the player to really get good at its gameplay, and if you don't start trying to master these parries and these dodges, you're really going to have a tough time of it. And I think that, like that's just another thing gamers really love is like this challenge aspect to it. And, like you can technically go into any area and just parry everything and like you're good to go. But like that's just very unlikely you're going to have all the moves mastered the first time you talk to or try to take on an enemy. And like enemies can 100% one-shot you in this game. Like if you go into the wrong area, if you're not fully ready to go into an area that you just stumble across or something like that, this game will absolutely one-shot you. So like you can technically get around that if you're good enough, but like most likely you're not going to be. So you're going to eventually get hit and just die. So yeah, gameplay I objectively cannot talk about anything wrong with this gameplay. Like, it really is, for anybody who is interested in an RPG, really, really, really good. Like, everything about it from top to bottom is so well done and well put together and interesting and different, and also incorporating the best parts of like games that it should be. Like, that's, I cannot fault it, right? Characters, I'm halfway through this game and I really don't care about most of the characters in this game. I think they're fine. I think that, like, this game, for some reason, in the first half of the game, it just doesn't do a very good job in really introducing you to these characters. I think the intro to this game is amazing. Really pulled me in, loved it. Again, like, once you start meeting the actual characters for this game, getting to know them, there's just not a lot of time for you to get to know them, understand them, and like fall in love with them. I just haven't had that time, I guess. Maybe I'll change my mind, but like, I don't really care about the characters in this game that much. At least the vast majority of them, I don't. Here's where we start getting into some cracks, right? This is a 92. I hear people say this game is beautiful, its visuals are amazing. I think its scenery is. There's some really inventive scenery. I've heard people say this looks like a AAA game. I don't know what the frick you're talking about, okay? I get that there's a lot of beautiful scenery, a lot of interesting vignettes, a lot of awesome skyboxes. Like, I get that some of the visuals in this game are artistically really well done. Bro, to say the visuals are AAA quality, I think you're blind. Like, I think especially character models, hair in this game looks like it's from the PlayStation 3 generation. Like, character models in general often look like they're like mannequins. Like, there's like, their eyes are wide and like look unnatural and uncanny. Sometimes their mouths move out of sync with lips, and like they kind of look like puppets, like kind of talking in a way. Like, textures in certain situations are not particularly well done. Like, sometimes when there's like blood on a character, it just looks like kind of ridiculous. Like, I think it's kind of weird to say that this game is a AAA level visual quality when I certainly don't see that. Again, beautiful visuals from an artistic standpoint, but from a polish standpoint, I don't see it. Polish in general, I think, leaves something to be desired. I do often get some bad camera angles or some clipping within cutscenes or talking to certain characters. I'll like be looking at a rock instead of looking at all of the characters talking to people. Movement, I think I wouldn't have normally complained about movement, but they really showcase how clunky the movement is with an optional platforming section, which is really unfortunate because they lock a character's bikini skin behind like a really difficult platforming section. You're probably like, what the frick are you talking about? A really difficult platforming section? It's like, yes, this game has a lot of interesting little bits and bobs associated with it that really give it a lot of personality and a lot of fun. Like, and I think that is 100% like this particular instance. I see a lot of people talk about how dark this game is. Like, this game is just depression, the game. It's so edgy. The opening to this game is. I think immediately after that, the game becomes incredibly lighthearted. Like, almost tonally whiplashed so. Like, I genuinely was like, dang, like, we just touched to some really dark and sad moments. And then, like, we're like having these really comical and lighthearted, almost like childish moments within this game. Like, I'm like, what the frick is going on here? So I don't know where people are getting that. Like, it's kind of odd to hear people say that. Like, overall, I'm halfway through this game, and like, I objectively cannot criticize much about it. Like, I think objectively the story is great. I think the characters aren't bad. I think the gameplay is amazing. I think the little touches here are great. I think the only thing I can really objectively critique is like some of the polish here. But again, this is a fairly big game, fairly complex game. Like, what needs to be good is great. And like, it is a game developed by 30 people at a discounted price of $50. I'm not going to complain. Like, I'm just not, you know? But I am surprised that it is getting glazed as hard as it is. Like, people are saying this game is Game of the Year already. And like, guys, we got a lot of great games coming out this year. I don't know if you've looked out into the horizon here, but we have a lot of games that I think really have a much better shot at winning Game of the Year than this. You know, like Death Stranding 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, you know, like Super Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza. Like, I'm sorry, but like, and that's not, we haven't even gotten to Summer Games Fest. So like, we aren't even gonna get into like some of even other games that we don't even know are coming yet that could be even better than this. So crazy to hear people like, this is definitively the Game of the Year. Like, I don't know. It's just, it's a little over the top. I feel like it's a little over the top. That being said, I think there's something here for everyone, right? You got old school JRPG stuff. You got like an overworld map that you're, you know, like zoomed out on. You kind of walking a long distance over a period of time. You got, you know, typical turn-based stuff. You know, you got new school people. You know, you get some Dark Soul fan stuff. You know, obviously the difficulty that can be pretty hard. You know, you got some interesting visuals, and you got some parrying and dodging mechanics that are incorporated there. Again, I think that's a little over the top to say it's you know, Sekiro inspired, but you know, I understand the comparison. It's got a really interesting story. It's got in-depth combat for people who really like, you know, builds and tweaking with numbers, and you can break the frick out of this game if you want. You've got secret optional bosses that I've just stumbled across in the world. I've stumbled across in areas that are unique and have unique move sets that you have to kind of prepare for and understand and master, that are just completely optional. And, you know, like, you stumble across and you don't have to do them at all. There's a lot. There's a lot here to love. I wish it was grabbing me more, though. Like, I feel like this game has not grabbed me by the soul yet. And I don't know if that's just me not, like, it's just not my kind of genre that does that. Or, like, if I'm feeling like I don't love this game as much as everybody else seems to, and like it's so overhyped. Like, have you ever been in a situation where like everybody's like, yo, this is the best thing ever, and you're like, it's great, but it's not like, I don't know, it's not, I don't love it that much, and you're like, oh well, maybe I just hate this freaking game. I don't know. Like, the disconnect between how people are feeling about it and how you're feeling about it makes you feel even worse about it. I feel like I've encountered that a few times, so I feel like I'm hitting that here. You know, like, I'm like, I really wish I was loving this game more than I am, because everybody else seems to be loving this game so much and saying it's one of the greatest games ever made. And, you know, again, it's just not grabbing me that way. And maybe by the time I get to the end of this game, and I've had more time to interact with the characters, and I've had more time to really see where the story goes, and maybe fall in love with it even more, that I'll come back next time, because I'll definitely have finished this game by the next time I talk about it on the podcast, is I'll be like, yeah, like, this is definitely like my favorite game of the year. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Like, I love this game so much. And, I mean, I hope, right? So that's why I don't like talking about games like halfway through them. That's why I don't like talking about games like halfway through them when I'm recording podcasts, because I'm like, oh, well, you know, like, I feel like maybe my opinion can completely change on a game by the next time I talk about it. And like, I'm freaking making an idiot out of myself talking like I freaking don't love this game, even though I've said only really positive things about it this entire time. And, you know, like, I don't know. That's why I prefer to play a game all the way through. But it just so happens life gets in the way. So you can't always do that. But anyway, that's my initial impressions on Clair Obscure Expedition 33. Frenchy McFrench. There's even mimes in this game. There's also optional mime and baguette weaponry, which is, again, it's just very French. But anyway, yeah, Clair Obscure, great game. Definitely recommend it. I think, especially if you have Game Pass, you need to be checking this out. And honestly, even if anything sounds good about it, give it a shot. It's a discounted game out the gate at $50. So very interesting game that I definitely recommend. So that wraps up another episode of the Plug in Play podcast. Friends, I appreciate you. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you sticking around. If you're here, dang, that's really impressive, actually. Give yourself a pat on the back. Give yourself a round of applause. And I really do appreciate you. It's not often that I get to talk to people about video games like this. And I really just do this to have a conversation, right? To feel like I'm talking to somebody, because I feel like if I talked to people like this regularly, in the real world, they would glaze over about minute 2. So, we're up to about 2 hours now. And I feel like, this is the only way I can possibly get all of my thoughts and all of what's in my heart and my mind out. And so just the fact that anybody's listening at all and anybody feels like, the 2 minutes is not enough. That is an honor and a privilege, and I certainly do appreciate it. And I'm humbled that you give me your time, as you do. But enough sappy stuff. Thank you again for listening, sir or madam. I wish you the best. I wish you play some good video games, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.